Okay, I think we can get started. Good morning. I'm Lee Pfluger, and on behalf of the League of Women Voters, we welcome you this morning. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize Karen Carpenter, who, of course, is the chair of the school board. Glad to have you with us, and we thank you for your service to our community, Karen. Am I speaking loudly enough? Ta-da! I can speak far more loud. I just got hearing aids a couple of weeks ago, and I still don't even recognize my voice. So raise your hand if you're not hearing me, and I can speak more loudly. Well, today we will have guests who will speak about a very important subject, as you all know, and that would be our schools. They're facing significant challenges these days, some of which are funding issues, changing in evaluation methods, and curricula, to name just a few. Our guests will present their strategies and plans to provide a high-quality education to our students. We're glad to have you with us to share this information. Two guests today, Dr. Diana Green, who's the Manatee County School District Deputy Superintendent for Instruction, and Dr. Bill Jones, who's the principal of the Manatee School for the Arts Charter School. To give you just a little bit of information about them, and many of you probably already know some of this information, so bear with me. Dr. Green is, again, our Deputy Superintendent for Instruction. She's had an education career for more than 25 years with experience in advanced K-12 teaching, curriculum development, leadership, and school district administration. For those of you who have worked in education, she's been there and done that, right? She graduated from Santa Fe Community College and went on to the University of North Florida. Dr. Green holds a doctorate from Capella University in advanced K-12 education. She served as Deputy Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction for the Marion County Public Schools in Ocala before coming to Manatee County. At Marion County, she directed the infrastructure and vision for the academy, a comprehensive education model for at-risk learners. She has a track record of creating innovative staff and curriculum programs that improve teacher, student, and overall school performance. Her most recent presentations and papers include Anytime, Anywhere, and Any Pace Learning, and a comprehensive plan of literacy initial instruction. We welcome you, Dr. Green. We also have with us Dr. Charles W. Jones, better known as Bill. Dr. Jones grew up in Manatee County, graduated from Manatee High School in 1966. After earning his AA degree from Manatee Junior College, he obtained master's and doctorate degrees in education from the University of Florida. After teaching at Central Florida Community College in Ocala for 6 years, he served on the faculty of Marshall University in West Virginia, where he directed medical education programs. Everybody hear me okay now? Okay. In 1985, he accepted the position of Vice President of Academic Affairs at Northwestern Health Sciences University in Minnesota. After what he says were 8 of the coldest years in a Florida boy's life, those of us who've come from the north know what he's talking about, he and his family returned to Manatee County in 1993. In 1998, he started Manatee School for the Arts with 250 students. By fall of 2012, 4 years from inception, the School for the Arts grew to over 1,600 students in grades 6 through 12. This school is recognized by the state of Florida as a high-performing charter school, and in 2011, it was designated as a Gold Seal School of Excellence. This was a designation by the Florida Consortium of Charter Schools. Dr. Jones, we welcome you. And now I think we'll have Dr. Jones, or no, Dr. Green first. Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the superintendent, Mr. Rick Mills, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for inviting us out to have this very important conversation about education. Education is truly at a crossroads in which we have to decide how important it is to our society. Since 2007, in the state of Florida, districts across the state, doesn't matter whether it's Duval to Marion, Manatee, all the way down to Dade, have been cut millions and millions of dollars to support educating our children. School districts have had to make very difficult choices. Ms. Carpenter, being the school board chair, knows all too well how challenging it has been over the last few years in trying to properly educate our students in the midst of not only budget cuts, but other issues that have impacted Manatee County Public Schools. As you've read in the paper and heard on the news, we have gone through some challenges most recently as it relates to the budget. We began this school year with a little bit over a $7 million budget deficit, meaning below zero. And working with the school board, the superintendent initiated having conversation also with another group of experts, retired superintendents, retired directors, deputy superintendents came together to develop a financial recovery plan. And today our plan is in motion, and it is the superintendent and the board's goal to end with a $10.3 million reserve fund balance that would put us at the state required 3%. I say all of this because what I'm about to talk about, all of this impacts how well we can educate our students. But in my mind, the bottom line is how important is the education of our children to us. We tend to think, well, I'm paying my taxpayer dollars, then that should equate to a great public education. And for many of our students, probably most of our students, that is a correct statement. But we have children who are coming to us today that have issues and baggage that many of us have never seen in our lifetime. They have more drama in the morning before they arrive than many of us have during our normal work day, work week, and during our normal run-of-the-mill lives. And so what we have to do today is take public education up. We have to increase our rigor. We have to increase our support for these students. Because if we do not, it will impact our society. We will have a generation of people who will not be an educated populace. And so with that in mind, we are starting to change our culture. And we started with a new academic statement, and I'd like to read it. For Manatee County Public Schools for the 2013-14 school year, we are going to implement a student-centered, standards-based, rigorous teaching and learning process that will positively impact all student learning of the next generation and Common Core standards to ensure the success of all students on state assessments for the next grade level, for graduation, and for college and career readiness. We have to put our students first. What their needs are must be addressed, because if we don't, their learning is in vain. Well, better yet, they're probably not learning. Each day, we serve over 46,000 students. We transport over 20,000 students. We feed over 35,000 students breakfast, lunch, and today we are starting to serve 3,000 students supper. We basically could run the school system for 2 weeks if, heaven forbid, some catastrophe happened, a hurricane. The school system actually could continue to run because of the amount of fuel we must keep on hand, the amount of food we must keep on hand, the amount of energy that we expend every single day. See, everyone thinks when I pay my tax dollars, all that goes to is just educating children. The public school system has many more obligations than just educating. Ms. Carpenter and the 4 other board members every other Monday come together to do just that, to run a $300 million business of educating children. And part of that is to ensure that our buildings are working every day, which covers our capital expense. Do we have the lights on, the electricity running every day? Paying employees health benefits and if we have disability benefits, ensuring that, again, can we fill our buses and keep them working? Buses must come off the road every 25 days to have a major inspection to ensure the safety of our children. So we must have mechanics who take care of our buses. Liability insurance. We must insure every single building. We have 54 buildings in this school district and 11 charters. We must make sure we have insurance to cover those buildings. We must make sure our students are insured for athletic events. We run a multi-million-dollar organization. And in the middle of that, we're supposed to educate our children. Tough job. It's a tough job for the board, as well as our superintendent, and all of us who are a part of running our public school system. With that said, one might think it's a daunting task to educate our children. It can be, but when you have people who are committed and dedicated to every child's learning, then miracles happen every day. I see them. I see them when I put my foot on any single one of our campuses. I can see a miracle happening. Miracles take time, and they take structure, and they take commitment. And so what I'm going to share for the next few minutes is our structure that we have put in place and the people who are part of that plan moving our school district to greatness. Today, we have 14 elementary schools that are either graded D or F. We have 3 other, one's a charter school and 2 other middle schools that are graded D or F, so a total of 17. Before we can move to greatness, we have to accept where we are. This is unacceptable. This indicates that many of the children who are in those schools either are not at level of proficiency, which is considered grade level, or they may be lacking in either reading or math skills. We have put a very aggressive plan together to not only ensure that those schools are going to jump at least 2 letter grades at the end of this year, but to also support our higher performing schools, our A, B schools, and who I like to call in the middle, our C schools. Our goal is at the end of this year, every single one of our schools will either jump 2 letter grades or maintain a letter of A, or they jump 1 letter grade to be in the A and B range, so that all of our schools will have a school grade between A or C. How are we going to do this? First, we are implementing a vision that Mr. Mills brought to Manatee County, and it was a way to set up our infrastructure. We attempted to hire 3 executive directors, one for elementary, one for middle, and one for high school. These individuals spend 90% of their time in our schools, supporting our school-based administrators. Along with the executive directors, we have instructional specialists. These individuals come to us with expertise in either language arts, reading, mathematics, science, or the social sciences. We have paired their expertise up with our schools based on their needs. So we may have 3 at the middle school, and those 3 individuals spend their days working with classroom teachers. Anything from lesson planning to instruction, modeling good practices, helping to monitor other programs we have into those schools. Through this infrastructure, we can identify areas of weakness and immediately address those areas. Through this structure, schools can also communicate back to the district office their needs. So this afternoon, I am sure I will be met by one of the executive directors to tell me such and such school needs this. How can we support them? We use this information to have what we call action planning meetings. We have them every other Friday to continue to monitor all 54 schools, look at the issues that are occurring in those schools, and develop an action plan to address those issues. We have everything from implementation of state law down to so-and-so's lunch schedule is getting in the way of intensive reading remediation. How do we help them fix that? So by putting this infrastructure in place, we now have the ability to intervene before it's too late. A part of that is also our instructional model. We have gone to what we call a focused instructional model, meaning that we ensure that our students are having educational opportunities for every standard that the state of Florida says is important for that particular grade level and that particular subject area. We have mapped out our curriculum. So our students, which we have a very transient population, which means they move from one school to another, and because we're a school district of choice, they can move from one school to another. We can ensure that there won't be gaps in their learning. And here's an example. This week in 3rd grade, we are teaching about 2-digit addition. If a little child moves from Bayshore Elementary and moves to Myakka Elementary, we can ensure they're also teaching 2-digit addition. They may be teaching it differently, they may be using different resources, but we are ensuring that that child does not miss out on that particular standard. So by developing our focus calendars, we are ensuring all of our students are having access to high quality instruction, are making sure they have access to all of the standards in which the state of Florida says our students are required to know. Part of that is developing formative assessments to inform our instruction. So what good will it be if I teach, and then I wait till the end of the year, which our students are required to take the FCAT, and find out, oh, they did not know this particular concept well enough, and that's why they did not score well. Now we have a way to intervene much earlier. We have formative assessments so that our teachers can get that information. It can inform them on how well their students understood the concept or the unit that they taught for the last month. And now they have a vehicle by which to go back and either reteach, provide additional enrichment to enhance what they've learned, but it gives them a roadmap. And we are not waiting until the end of the school year to determine what we've done all year worked. We are intervening, and it's what we call responding to the data. If you go to the doctor and you've been experiencing symptoms that make you think I might have the flu, and your doctor says, well, I've taken your symptoms, you have the flu, I'm going to give you this antibiotic. That's what we are doing in our classrooms. We are providing instruction, we take a test, and now our teachers, who are the professionals, know, okay, this is now what you need to help you understand this particular, this particular concept. Part of that is working with our principals. We have divided our principals up into a tiered implementation. If your school is graded a D or an F, then you have much more support than a school that is at the A level. So our schools that are A to C, they get to elect whether they want to take the formative assessments that are generally administered once a month. All of our schools take a quarterly assessment. So the principals now have sort of an incentive to get better, because then we won't intervene as much. We won't be on your campuses as much. But what we're finding out amazingly is that they are welcoming the support. They are appreciating the executive directors and the instructional specialists providing that direct support on their campus. The last part of this process is we have a few schools that need even more support. We have two schools, Daughtry and Roger Gardens Elementary. They have been identified as what we call turnaround schools. Those two particular schools still have the same support, but I personally work with those two principals. I go out to their schools every other week. We go through classrooms. I support the principal. I mentor the principal. I encourage them to take certain professional development opportunities based on our observations and our conversations. These Daughtry Elementary also participates in what we call the extended hour. The children stay in the school for an additional hour of reading instruction. We have 5 schools that are a part of the extended hour program. They were identified by the Department of Education in what they call the lowest 100 in reading scores. So based on their reading scores, they were identified as needing an additional hour. So we have Daughtry Elementary, Palmetto Elementary, Oneiko Elementary, Orange Ridge Elementary, and now the 5th one, Samoset Elementary. There I go. So this is sort of our my surface explanation of our framework that we have put in place to reach our goal with all of our schools graded at least A through C at the end of this school year. That's not going to take us to greatness. That's going to get us to a point where we are now ready for greatness. So in moving to greatness, we are also at the same time planning for the next 5 years. It will begin this October-November timeframe of the district strategic plan. We will be going out into the communities. This endeavor will be led by Mr. Robert Johnson. He is our Director of Performance Management, and asking the community, what are the educational activities, programs that you value and that you feel need to remain in our school district? And we will build a district strategic plan for over the next 5 years on how we're going to maintain those programs and at the same time meet the superintendent and the board's vision of greatness for our school district. Part of that strategic plan I will derive an academic strategic plan. Our academic strategic plan will start in late January, early February, and we will again start mapping out how will we meet academic greatness in 5 years and what programs will we put in place. So part of that is redesigning our ESE department. ESE stands for Exceptional Student Education, and moving our school staffing plan. All of those pieces will come together to help Manatee County Public Schools be one of the premier school districts in the state of Florida. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Dr. Jones?
Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the League for inviting me here today, and it's good to see a good crowd. I'm going to take a little different tack today, give you a little more, little less perhaps tactical. I wanted to start out by talking about excellence, because I think that's where, maybe that's where Dr. Green left off, is where they're headed. And so maybe I can pick up a little bit here. The second page of our faculty handbook is, and I think some people think it's a little on the hokey side, but I have a piece here that I've had for many, many, many years, and I've seen it attributed to a lot of people. I even saw it attributed to Teddy Roosevelt one time, but I don't think that was the case. And it says that excellence can be achieved if you care more than others think is wise, risk more than others think is safe, dream more than others think is practical, and expect more than others think is possible. And these are some principles that have stood me in good stead for a long 40-year career so far. And I was just going to, and I'll move into a little more practical stuff, but I thought about, how does a leader create excellence? And I think and remember, I'm working with a single institution. Poor Dr. Green over here has got 54 schools, and God knows how many people she has to interact with every day. So I admire that work. And having been at the university level, I understand those interactions, and I enjoy being at a single institution. How does a leader create excellence? Number one, they pick good people. Well, who are good people? How do you pick good people? I'm reminded of Thomas Edison. If you ever go down to the Edison house, he had a great saying. If you're going to have a good idea, you better have a lot of ideas. And I think, unfortunately, the same thing is true about picking good people, because you can interview till you're blue in the face, but you won't know until they actually come and do the job for a while, and you can find out what you really got. But from there, when you pick someone, the thing you need to do is you give them a very clear vision. That's what I hear Mr. Mills doing in the district. And you include expectations of excellence. There was a great book. All of you are familiar, I hope, with the German brand Porsche. And Dr. Porsche, well, there are 3 Dr. Porsches in the family, and there was a great book. I love the title of it, and it said, "Excellence is Expected." And they used to talk about one of the problems was that, man, you could do a fantastic job. And of course, no offense if any of you are from a German background, but, very teutonically, it was like, that's what was expected. Must have been tough if you need a pat on the back every once in a while, because you didn't get a lot in that setting. But once you tell them what the vision is, what you expect, the excellence, then you have to tell them what to do, not how to do it. In the mid-'80s, I was involved in medical education, and one of the great outgrowths of that was problem-based education. Medical education always was in the lead because they had all the money, and the government gave them even more money. So we were doing all kinds of neat stuff that you didn't see in public education for years later. But one of the great things about that is, you tell people what the outcomes are. What do you expect? And you don't necessarily tell them exactly how to do it because you picked good people. You expect that they will come up with some of the ideas, that they will figure out how to solve the problem. Now, the other thing that I have found very critical for achieving excellence is what I call supporting risk-taking. Because you're not going to achieve excellence without taking some risks. And this is a two-way street. The leadership has to support, they have to be believers, and the people you're encouraging to get out there and do the job, you have to let them know that you support them taking that risk. Every time I hire a faculty member, I always say to them, try implementing what we're doing, and if you have to get outside the box a little bit, give it a try. And every once in a while, it's not going to work, okay? The secret, though, is recognizing that it didn't work, scrambling to figure it out, and get together with your colleagues or one of us, and we'll figure out why it didn't work and move on and find something that does work. But you've got to be willing to take that risk. Then you evaluate the outcomes. That's where they're moving right now in the school district. They're going to be evaluating the outcomes. Well, what happens when you evaluate the outcomes? Some of them are good and some of them are not so good. Well, you have a couple of choices. And actually, I have more choices than the district does in this regard, because you can either help develop someone if they show promise, or like I talked about in the beginning, sometimes you just have to let them go. Sometimes they have to be replaced. And I don't have a union to worry about, so the red tape on our side is much simpler. In fact, for example, at Manatee School for the Arts, no faculty or staff member has a contract at all. None. They're all at-will employees. And by the way, I do have people who've been with us for 16 years now. So something's working right. Okay. Well, what are the greatest impediments to achieving excellence? It's fear. Absolute fear. Fear on both sides. Leadership are afraid that the people they put in there won't do the job, can't do the job. And the people on the other side who are supposed to do the job are afraid they won't get it done. They're afraid of what will happen to them if it goes wrong. So you see how all this ties together. Leadership has to have faith in the people that they choose. And if it doesn't turn out, then you have to make a decision what you do with those people. You either help them out or you move them out, one or the other. And fear on the other side, like I said, you've got to support those people. You've got to make sure that they know that you understand not everything works every time for every kid. Doesn't happen. So you've got to be able to deal with that. The other big problem that, and I loved what Dr. Green talked about, the other problem of trying to achieve greatness or excellence is mediocrity. It's the push for the average, trying to get all schools at one place. I love the fact she talked about supporting the outstanding schools. We have to do that. We can't neglect any level. We can't take all of our resources just to get everybody up to the average, because what you end up with is the average. And that's not what we were going for. Now, the other thing that I have a personal difficulty with, and Have all of you heard the term best practices? You know what that means. Well, you know what best practices are, don't you? Best practices are when everybody got together and said, well, this is the best way to do it. We all ought to do it this way. Well, what if it turns out they were all wrong? You have to overcome the fear that maybe you're right. You know, it's like, can they all be wrong? Yes. Yes, they can. I learned this in I don't know if we have any physicians or former physicians in the crowd, but medicine is a huge problem area for this. Boy, once they get it in the head that that's the way to do it, insurance companies, everybody else, that's the way you do it. And woe be on the maverick that gets out there and sometimes they get their head lopped off. But sometimes best practices keep us away from excellence. And that's why we've always got to be prepared to think twice about that. Review them, review them, review them. Because yesterday's best practices might not be today's. You can take them where they are, but you got to keep questioning them. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about Manatee School for the Arts. Most of you, I see a lot of familiar faces. Most of you have heard me or been through the school, actually, or have read about it. We have two primary philosophical bases for our program. The biggest one is the Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences. Now, I'm a PhD in education, and I've looked at an awful lot of theories of learning. I did a lot of human biology or human behavior as well. And right now, I think in the educational world, Howard Gardner is probably as well respected as anything out there. And what he said was, hey, we all have different kinds of intelligences. There's kinesthetic intelligence. There's interpersonal, intrapersonal. There's music. There's logical, mathematical. And he lists a few more. You get the idea. And what he was saying was that we tend to overlook many of the skills. And what he emphasizes is that these are pathways of learning. People learn in different ways. And if we neglect those pathways, then we're neglecting an opportunity to help people learn. The other thing we use a lot, and some of you have probably touched on this, is the Myers-Briggs Personality Type Indicator. It's a great little, it's the most widely used psychometric instrument in the world now. And if you've never taken it, it's a nice little test, 60 questions. Well, the big ones have 100 questions. And basically it asks two questions. How do you like to get your information? How do you like to make your decisions? And it's very, very useful. We use it because what we've discovered, and I've been working with it since 1969, and what you discover is that the learning style of most teachers beyond elementary education, most middle school and high school teachers, their preferred style for getting their information is exactly the opposite of most of their students. So in other words, if you're the teacher, you have to remember that probably 3/4 of the students who walk in the door like to learn differently than you do. Oh my. So we are constantly working with faculty to make sure that they remember that you can't slide into, just teaching the way you learned. It doesn't always work. You've got to be understanding. So, by the way, a lot of people have asked, well, why the arts? What's the deal? And well, let me give you a practical answer, then I'll get into the philosophical answer. Number one, The number one industry in the state of Florida is, anybody know what it is? Agriculture. Agriculture is number one. Number two, entertainment. Let me tell you, I like to tell people that everything we do at Manatee School for the Arts has both a college major and a career path. Whether it's music, dance, theater, art, every one of them has both of those opportunities for all those students. And what's interesting is that we've discovered that there are often more opportunities in art scholarships than there are in athletic scholarships. And we have quite a few kids who are off to college on arts-based scholarships. It's nice. You have a lot of kids who go out and start to work in the field. By the way, the other reason the arts is because when you look at Howard Gardner's, remember his Pathways for Learning, what you find is that the arts line up very nicely. When he talks about kinesthetic learning, the bodily kinesthetic, yeah, we talk about dance. We use dance. When he talks about intrapersonal and interpersonal, that's the essence of theater. Intrapersonal, when you're trained as an actor to get into a character, that's when you know yourself, you understand the motivations. When I'm trying to get to an audience, that's the interpersonal. And the theater does a fantastic job of developing those and helping people. Music, of course, is an intelligence all of its own. I wish I had more of it. I was telling them earlier, those of you who have been in Bradenton for a long time, in the late 60s, I was a rock and roll star here on the west coast of Florida. Had a band, we played up and down from Naples to Gainesville. And used to play the Bradenton Auditorium, the Sarasota Auditorium. But we had a terrible manager, a guy by the name of A.J. Perry. And it was just awful. When we played in Bradenton, we were the Four Keys from Chicago. I never did live that down. I mean, everybody knew who we were. When we played in Fort Myers, we were from the Paramount Theater in New York. Okay. But music is an intelligence all of its own. And believe me, we have some, when you have a program that unleashes it, it is amazing to see what people can do. Okay. And math, of course, is a whole nother thing. But part of our goal is we try to use the arts to teach all of the subjects. Okay? Now understand there's a difference between arts-based education or arts infusion and just teaching the arts themselves. We do both. But the concept is that, for example, in the social studies class, we'll use music, we'll use theater, we use dance, because these are the ways that people learn. You know, 2,000 years ago, we used dance, we used music, we used storytelling. It was very effective, very effective. It's how people learn for a long time. I always talk, one of my great examples is that if you were teaching the Second World War, some of you might remember it, it would really be fun to walk into a group of kids today who don't know a whole lot about it, and you put on a recording of Wagner, you know, something really hard and very Teutonic, very Germanic. And you take that off and you say, okay, now think about the people that speaks to. And then you go over here and you put big band on, you know, Benny Goodman and a bunch of other stuff. And you talk about who are those people? And it is amazing when you do that how much insight that gives students about the subject. They begin to see, particularly those who use those pathways. They put it together. Like I always say, if you have high musical intelligence, there are rhythms, there are patterns, there are things going on the rest of us never notice. You know, if you have high musical intelligence, you're probably trying to figure out what key that air conditioner is in. if you haven't already. Okay. All right, so that's really the thing about the arts. Okay. Real quickly, we want to talk about hurdles that we have as an individual charter school. Well, the first one, and it's gotten worse. We started almost 16 years ago. And I think we have to remember that charter schools were an outgrowth of the big reform movements of the 60s and 70s. We've kind of forgotten about crisis in the classroom and Johnny can't read and all those sorts of things. And charter schools were just one of a number of reforms that were proposed and were put into place. And they started in St. Paul, Minnesota in 1991. It was the first school in the country. Interestingly enough, that first school, for example, over half of the governing board was required to be made up of teachers and administrators of the school because they wanted the teachers to own the program. They wanted them to be in charge. We've reached the point now in Florida where no employee of the school can be on the board. When we first started our school, as the principal, I was on the board. And then the state came in and said, oh no, principals can't be on the board. And then just this past year, we had a law passed that said no employee may be on the board. So anyway, by the way, I like to call that the sniff test, because what's happened is they want to know that we're more and more like mainstream education. Our biggest hurdle is funding, as you probably suspect. I think we're all singing the same song on that. We've got the same problem. Our capital funding, except we don't get any of the local capital money. Your property taxes, we don't get any of that. Zero. Okay. Ours comes from a little fund that the state puts together, and we get a percentage of that. This year, last year, even this year, with an increase in that fund, we're getting less now than we got 6 years ago. Same problem, everybody has it. We're trying to figure out. So anyway, I won't go any further. All right, I'm going to cut it off there and go for questions. Thank you very much.
You probably getting teachers that are excellent. And what do you do about a teacher that is really not up to par?
The question was, what do we do with a teacher who's not up to par? Well, we have a very extensive framework we must follow because our teachers are a part of their association. And so every year our teachers go through an evaluation process. We are actually refining our teacher appraisal system, which is now required by state law. And next year it will be tied to their salaries if the law continues. So a teacher first must go through a number of observations. During those observations, the principal is allowed to give the teacher anecdotal information. They are not ranked on how well they have performed until the end of the school year. At the end of the year, if the teacher has a rating of U, which would be unsatisfactory, or N, which could be needs improvement or developing, at that point the principal can come in and provide support for that teacher. Now, good principals won't allow it to take that long. Our principals, we're working with them now on how to provide support for a teacher who's in trouble. It's very similar to what we're doing with our students. Don't wait till the end of the year to try to intervene. Intervene when you know immediately there's a problem. So many of our schools have reading coaches, math coaches, content area expertise individuals that they can help go into the classroom and model for the teacher and provide support. At the same time, they can also reach out to us. If I have a principal, which I just last week had a principal reach out to me, we are now developing a plan for that teacher. How can we support the teacher? What is the area of weakness? How do we whether it's professional development or is it more a direct conversation. We have things mapped out to support our teachers. Our goal is we're not trying to fire teachers. We're trying to make outstanding teachers. And so back to that process, at the end of the year, if they have either one of those, then an intervention takes place. It requires documentation. There must be a timeline. Once they go through that, then the teacher is reevaluated. If improvement is made, then their evaluation, we go through the process. But it is very lengthy, if the bottom line, to answer your question. Yes, and for new hires, we still have what we call a 97-day. They're no longer called on probation, but during that time span, a principal can evaluate a teacher and they can say this is not working out and release the teacher at that time.
I'd like to know more about the technical school on Highway 70, who gets to go there. I was also curious about whether or not the dropout rate might be higher among students from families that might not speak much English.
Two questions. Wants to know more information about MTI, Manatee Technical Institute, and there are two individuals in the audience if you want to have more conversation about Manatee Technical Institute, Dr. Conrad and Ms. Carpenter. But they have outstanding programs, and it's mostly open for adults. It is our adult technical facility. Even though we have some dual enrollment programs where some of our high school students take classes there, it is based on a GPA and a student interest. For an adults, it's simply your interests. You would go to the institute to see which programs you have an interest in. It's very similar to deciding, I think I want to go back to college. You have information you have to fill out. If you need additional support, then you would get that support before complete enrollment into a program. But I would highly encourage you to talk to either one of the individuals to get a much more detailed answer. Secondly, our dropout, we do have a higher dropout rate from students who come from families where English is not the first language. We are in the process of evaluating what we are doing in our schools and to make a decision on are we going to go a different pathway and how will we support those students. One of the programs that it is my desire to bring is what we call Project Hope. It is to start working with our overage elementary students. Today we have over 250 overage elementary students, and when I say overage, you're in 5th grade and you're 13 years old. You're too old to be in elementary. You need to be in middle school, and we need to figure out a way to get you to completion, because research says they're not graduating. They're going to drop out if we do not intervene very quickly.
I have a few questions. I wondered, is there a volunteer program in Manatee? I've been a school volunteer at a couple different towns that I've lived in, and one of them actually was in Boston at a school right near the airport where the kids didn't speak English. Every child was, a foreign language, but the program was very successful, Partners in Education. And it brought the kids right up to par where they needed to be. Is there any kind of a volunteer program in Manatee here?
The question was, do we have a volunteer program in our Manatee County schools? Yes, we do. Every school has their own volunteer program.
Oh,
so you can go to any school. But I would like to point out two volunteer programs that are running currently and are very successful. One is called Reading Pals. It is a partnership between Manatee County Public Schools and United Way. And you are working in one of our 5 schools, high-risk elementary schools, and you have just what it is, a reading pal, starting with kindergarten. You would work with that child the entire school year, 1 day a week for approximately 30 minutes to an hour. I'm now going to put Ms. Carpenter on. She is one of our Reading Pal volunteers, and she can definitely give you some more information. The next program is Take Stock in Children. For many of the students going to college, they would be the first, and we have many students who desire that, but yet they don't have the financial wherewithal to get to college. Take Stock in Children is a fantastic program run under Doug Wagner, but Diana is her name, and her last name is Diana Dill runs the program. And these students need a mentor. So you would stay with that student for 4 years. They're identified in 8th grade, and then as a Take Stock in Children mentor, you would mentor that child for their high school career, helping them to graduate high school. It's a very successful program, and one that Manatee County should be very proud of. So those are two more structured type volunteer programs, but all of our schools run their own volunteer program.
And is there a similar program in the junior high grades too, to the one you just spoke about in high school?
They are identified in middle school. No, Take Stock is generally for their high school career, to prepare them, to support them as they go through high school, to maintain their GPA, their behavior, to provide support for them, help them realize, the wonderful things that many of you have gone through in life that they may not be experiencing at this time.
No, because it's just my experience that if you get the kids in junior high, sometimes they fly and really do well when you can get them motivated.
Project Hope is what we were talking about moving to the middle school, is catching these overage elementary students who really are middle school students and creating a program at our middle school starting next year.
The program you mentioned about studying World War II, is that based on the philosophy of the Finnish schools that are rated top in the world?
No, not really.
No, because it sounded very...
I'm sure I know that they do some similar arts-based and some problem-based learning.
Yeah.
But no, we're doing our own thing.
No, because it's very interesting, though, reading about the Finnish schools. Okay.
Thank you.
As a retired educator, I am most impressed with your program, with your planning. It's simply fantastic. But my concern has always been the diversity of your population and how that is handled in this situation.
Is your question, you want to know how are we handling the diversity of our population?
We have many children who have different learning styles, it's true, but still cannot learn. And what is done about them?
Well, towards the end of my presentation, I talked about changing our staffing plan. Part of that is also addressing the needs of diversity. We have students who English is not their first language, that they have a very different culture in how they handle education. And then we have students whose ethnicity of African American descent handles education very differently. So part of what we are doing with changing our staffing allocation is to try to fill those gaps at our schools. Because if you are at a school that is 70% Hispanic and then 25% African American and only 5% Caucasian, then the staff at that school needs to somewhat reflect that, so that parents and children feel like they can identify with the adults in that building. We are reviewing that currently through our HR process to look at how we're dealing with that. But with that, just because I'm African American does not mean I can truly identify with a child of poverty, right, because I did not grow up in poverty. Right. So it's also still training, providing professional development for all of our staff, not just our teachers, our administrators, on how do we help our children that come from very different backgrounds. We just did a training Friday on trauma care. We are seeing more and more children coming to us with trauma from issues, and they come with very different needs. Yeah. And instead of just saying, oh, Johnny is misbehaving today, You didn't know that Johnny's mom was arrested over the weekend. So Johnny's gone through some, we need to handle Johnny a little bit differently today than someone else who did not have to go through that.
But
So
can that be started prior to a kid getting into kindergarten and not being ready for kindergarten? Is it possible to have mandatory preschool in this country?
well, you will need to talk to some other people other than me.
I know.
Right now, we have voluntary pre-K. Part of our plan is to now, next year, add what we call Title I pre-K. Today, parents have to pay for a portion of pre-K during the day, unless their child has been identified as a student with disability. And we're bringing in Title I pre-K, and basically that is giving pre-K services to children of poverty, so that the parent doesn't have to worry about paying. They have a certified teacher and a paraprofessional in that classroom working with them. Research says children who go to early childhood programs, specifically pre-K, they are not retained in third grade. And when they're not retained in third grade, they have more than a 90% chance of graduating high school.
Well,
so we know we need to expand.
That's the point. They're always playing catch up. And my philosophy would be to start them mandatory at age 3. Thank you.
Hi, I was wondering if you both could comment on what you think of Common Core curriculum.
First of all, I think we need to have an understanding what is Common Core. Common Core is a set of standards. It is not a curriculum. It is not an instructional model. It does not tell teachers how to teach. What it does is it has added to the rigor of the standards that our state says our students are supposed to know. An example, remember I talked about the 2-digit addition. Well, that would be an old standard. A Common Core standard would be, in using 2-digit addition, explain how a student shall be able to explain this operation using real world problems. So a question on a test might say you've gone to the grocery store, your mom gave you $5, and you want to buy 3 different items. Explain 3 different ways you can still afford those 3 items and also bring back change from your $5. That's a whole lot more than 10 plus 25 equals 35. Common Core is just simply rigorous standards that are to prepare our students for college or be career ready.
I would just like to add to that a little bit that I think while it's not a curriculum, part of the problem is that these new standards do imply curriculum in many areas, and I think there are some people who are getting a little distressed about that. The other issue that, again, some of you are in the same age group I am, and quite frankly, Common Core, and I think Dr. Green said it right, it's really, a lot of it's the same standards we had, just bumped them up a little bit. One of my big concerns, though, is the new emphasis on the specialization. In other words, what they talk about is, instead of looking at the river being a mile wide and a foot deep, they want to look at the river a foot wide and a mile deep, which sounds really good, but I'm trying to figure out, for example, if I were teaching American history, if I were teaching science or any of these subjects, which of that stuff am I going to leave out? And which are the examples that I will use to make sure that you can think? So I think that as we implement the Common Core, like everything else for the last 7,500 years, I think we're going to find that it'll be refined, it'll be changed. We'll find places where it doesn't address the needs as the way we thought it would. By the way, you know, they have officially changed the name here in Florida. It's no longer the Common Core, it is the Florida College and Career Readiness Standards. So when we did away with the park, we'll have to see what the new tests are going to be, but you can bet that the new tests will probably demand some changes in those standards. Let's stay tuned. It's all in the hands of the politicians now. It's a scary thought.
Thank you, Dr. Green and Dr. Jones, for joining us today and sharing your expertise. I'll let you sit down for a minute. I have a few more words, not many. We especially appreciate your leadership as you work to prepare our children of today for our educated and informed population tomorrow and electorate tomorrow as well. You have a big job, and we thank you. In closing, let's see what we have here. Well, first of all, our next hot topic will be on health care, and that will be on November 18th. We hope you can join us for that. I think you'll find the topic as worthwhile as today's and the one we had last month. We hope to see you here. We thank the Bradenton Women's Club for the use of their hall. We also thank METV for taping this program and replaying it on their station. For the TV schedule or to watch our program online, you may go to www.metvweb.com or our website, the League's website, www.lwvmanatee.org. And a couple more things before we leave today. One is Joe Williams, one of our members, is chairing an effort to work with the Florida Water and Land Conservation, and we're collecting signatures on petitions to help fund the many efforts that they are faced with in terms of that preservation. There will be a table back there, and she'll be back there to explain anything that you may want to know in terms of any questions you have. And then lastly, we hope that those of you who are not members of the League will consider membership. We seek to be a bipartisan organization, and our main goal is to, pardon me? What did I say? Bipartisan, nonpartisan. Thank you. Nonpartisan, or I'm only the president. What do I know? She's a past president. She's been here a long time. No. Nonpartisan organization, and our main goal is to make sure that our electorate is as informed as possible. There is more information on this back table to the left of the doors you leave, and there are application blanks there as well. And Rosalie Schaefer will be leading that, as well as a couple of our members. So we hope you'll consider membership. We're glad to have you with us today. We thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next month.